Under the blazing sun, our small vegetable stand quietly stood in a poor area where the dry wind gently blew. At 68, my hands were gnarled from years of hard work, but they still moved deftly as I arranged the lettuce. I'm Shirley, and despite the toll time has taken on my hands, they remain as skillful as ever. I could feel the weight of my years, but also the pride of a life lived with purpose. As I wiped down the counter with a damp cloth, I saw my granddaughter Jessica approaching, her arms full of carrots, her eyes shining with hope. My heart swelled with love and a touch of worry. She was so young, so full of dreams. Jessica's voice was trembling with excitement as she told me about the medical school scholarship exam. I smiled encouragingly, remembering my own youthful aspirations, long buried under years of struggle and sacrifice. Of course you should apply, dear, I said, my voice firm with conviction. You've always been an excellent student. Remember, education is something no one can ever take away from you. I paused, my hand stilling on the damp cloth. I want a better future for you, Jessica, I added softly, the words heavy with the weight of my own unfulfilled dreams. Jessica nodded, carefully placing the carrots in a basket. I could see the conflict in her eyes as she expressed her worry about our finances and suggested working more. My heart ached at her selflessness, so reminiscent of my younger self. No, my love, I said, fixing her with a serious gaze. You need to focus on your studies. I'll take care of things here. Jessica protested, her face etched with concern. She suggested studying at night and working part-time during the day. I took her hand, cutting her off gently but firmly. Listen to me, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I've worked hard since I was a child. I worked barefoot in the countryside. This life now? It's luxury to me. I can work a little more. I won't let anything stand in the way of your future. I saw Jessica hesitate, her eyes darting to the customers passing by our stand. I just wish I could do more. I want you to be proud of me, Grandma, she said, her voice small and uncertain. I smiled, squeezing her hand tightly. I'm already proud of you, my granddaughter. You're everything I could have wished for. Our conversation was interrupted by a customer, but as I attended to them, I could see Jessica mulling over my words. I knew she understood the sacrifices I was making for her, and I hoped it would motivate her to work even harder. When the customer left, Jessica turned to me, her eyes blazing with determination. Grandma, I promise. I'll get that scholarship, become a doctor, and take care of both of us. You'll see. I nodded, my smile full of love and pride. I believe in you, Jessica. I always have. As the day drew to a close and we were closing up the stand together, I sensed Jessica had something on her mind. She broke the silence that had settled between us, her voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of sadness. Grandma, how did you manage to get through it all alone after Grandpa passed away? She asked. I paused, my hand stilling on the cloth I was using to wipe down the counter. I took a deep breath, memories of those difficult times flooding back. The years after we lost Jessica's parents were a constant struggle, but I knew I had to be strong, not just for myself, but mainly for Jessica. I watched as Jessica continued to arrange the cloth, her movements slowing down. Her words came out almost in a whisper, and I could feel the pain in every syllable as she confessed that sometimes she still waited for her parents to return. My heart ached for her, remembering the little girl she once was, so full of hope and innocence. I moved closer to Jessica, gently placing my hand on her shoulder. I understand, my dear, I said softly, my voice thick with emotion. I grieve that loss every day too. You were so attached to your parents. But even at that young age, you were so strong. And I will always be here to support and protect you. Jessica stopped what she was doing and turned to face me completely. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and gratitude as she told me how lonely she sometimes felt, as if a part of her had disappeared along with her parents. But she also acknowledged that I had always been her rock, her safe haven. Her words touched me deeply, and I felt a lump forming in my throat. "You're the reason I keep going, Jessica," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "In the darkness, you brought light to my life. I swore to myself that I would do anything to ensure you had a happy and fulfilling life. That's why I want you to focus on your studies now and not worry about work." The neighboring stores had already closed, and the ensuing silence was broken only by the soft sound of folding cloth. Jessica's voice grew stronger, reflecting a new determination as she expressed her respect for my strength and how it encouraged her to pursue her dream of becoming a doctor. I smiled, feeling tears of pride welling up in my eyes. "Your mother had the same dream, you know," I said, my voice filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. "She wanted to be a doctor too. She would be so happy to see you walking that path, fulfilling what she couldn't." Jessica's voice choked with emotion as she confessed that sometimes, when she was studying, she felt as if her mother was right there beside her, cheering her on. Her words brought back a flood of memories, of her mother's bright smile, her determination, her dreams cut short too soon. I felt a deep ache in my chest, a mixture of grief for what was lost and hope for what could still be. "Your mother's spirit lives on in you, Jessica," I said, squeezing her shoulder gently. "Every time you open a book, every time you help someone, you're honoring her memory. And I know, wherever she is, she's incredibly proud of you." My granddaughter Jessica and I were tidying up our little corner store, the smell of coffee still lingering in the air. The warmth in my heart matched the glow of the setting sun outside our window. "Yes, I'm sure she's watching over you somewhere, proud of all your efforts," I said, my voice filled with certainty. As Jessica finished wiping down the counter, I could see her mind working, processing my words about her mother. The weight of the moment hung in the air, thick with emotion and unspoken memories. Jessica's eyes met mine, determination blazing within them like a wildfire. "Grandma," she said, her voice steady but tinged with a vulnerability that tugged at my heartstrings, "I'm going to do it. I'm going to become a doctor. Not just for myself, but for you, for Mom, for our whole family. I promise." Her words echoed in the small space, a declaration of hope and resilience that seemed to make the very walls of our store stand a little taller. I gazed into the distance, my eyes filled with love and pride for this remarkable young woman before me. "I've always known you'd accomplish it, my dear," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've always known." The certainty in my words was as solid as the foundation of our little store, built on years of hard work and unwavering faith. As we finished closing up shop, the familiar routine now tinged with newfound significance, Jessica looked at me with eyes that spoke volumes. Her silent gratitude washed over me like a warm embrace. "Grandma, I love you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything." I felt tears welling up in my eyes, a lifetime of memories and dreams crystallizing in that moment. "I love you too, Jessica," I responded, my voice carrying the same strength and depth of feeling. "More than anything, my little treasure." The days flew by in a whirlwind of anticipation and nervous energy. Before we knew it, the day of the university results had arrived. We sat together on an old sofa in a modest home, and Jessica held her phone tightly. The air was thick with expectation and anxiety, our expressions mirroring each other's mix of hope and fear. "Do you think you got in, Jessica?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. Jessica shrugged, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions. I don't know, Grandma, she replied, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I did my best, but the competition was fierce. I watched as Jessica accessed the university website, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed. I held her hand tightly, my weathered fingers intertwining with her young, strong ones. No matter what happens, I'm proud of you, I reassured her, my words a balm for both our nerves. Jessica nodded gratefully, and we waited in tense silence as the page slowly loaded. When Jessica's name appeared on the list of accepted students with a full scholarship, our joyous cries filled the room. I pulled Jessica into a tight embrace, tears of joy streaming down my wrinkled face. You did it, my child. You've done it, I exclaimed, my voice quivering with emotion. Jessica, still in a state of shock, hugged me back fiercely. I can't believe it, Grandma, she said, her voice brimming with joy and her smile stretching from ear to ear. A full scholarship. The pride and joy swelling in my chest like a warm tide. I stepped back a little, gazing at Jessica with a mix of pride and admiration on my face. You've made our dreams come true, Jessica, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Our family's dreams. As I wiped away my tears, I felt compelled to share a piece of my past with her. You know, I hardly had any opportunity to learn, I began, my mind drifting back to those hard-scrabble days of my youth. I spent most of my life working, just trying to make ends meet. I could barely read and write, and what little I knew, I learned from my cousin who taught me when I was young. Jessica listened intently, her hand grasping mine tightly, her touch a lifeline to the present as I navigated the choppy waters of my memories. But now, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word, I can say I have a granddaughter who's going to be a doctor. You're opening doors to a future I couldn't even have imagined. Jessica, visibly moved, squeezed my hand even tighter. Her eyes, brimming with determination and gratitude, met mine as she spoke. She told me that this was all because of me, because of how hard I'd worked and all the sacrifices I'd made for her. She said she was going to become a doctor not just for herself, but for us, for everything I'd done for her. I smiled through my tears, a smile of contentment and joy that seemed to light up the room. I knew you could do it, Jessica, I said, my voice filled with pride. You're my pride and joy. The rest of the afternoon was wrapped in a celebratory atmosphere, as warm and comforting as a well-worn quilt. I busied myself in the kitchen, preparing Jessica's favorite dishes, the familiar rhythms of cooking a soothing counterpoint to the excitement of the day. As we ate, we talked about her plans for the future and how this success would change our lives. We did it, Grandma, Jessica said, her words a bridge between our past struggles and future hopes. Together, we shared a moment of pure joy and hope, savoring the sweetness of our shared triumph. Weeks flew by, each day bringing new challenges and triumphs for Jessica. One evening, she came home from a grueling day at medical school, her face a canvas of wonder and exhaustion from her first few weeks of classes. I was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, when I noticed her infectious joy. How was it? I asked, my curiosity getting the better of me. How's your experience at the university, Jessica? Tell me everything, I want to know it all. Jessica set her backpack down on a chair and began to explain eagerly. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she described how everything was so different. The buildings were enormous and modern, she said, and the library had more books than she could have ever imagined. Everyone was so educated, she marveled, speaking clearly and correctly. It's like I've entered a whole new world, she concluded, her voice filled with awe. I smiled as I stirred the ingredients on the stove, my heart swelling with pride and a touch of bittersweet nostalgia. As I turned to Jessica, I couldn't help but feel a mix of curiosity and concern. What about your classmates? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Are you fitting in all right? I watched as Jessica hesitated for a moment, carefully choosing her words. She told me that most of her classmates came from very different backgrounds than ours. Some had new cars, wore designer clothes, and talked about overseas vacations. At first, she admitted, she felt out of place, like she didn't belong there. But she was trying to adapt, she assured me, trying to learn from them. As Jessica continued, she mentioned a boy named Andrew. Her eyes lit up with admiration as she spoke about him. She said he was very kind to her, even giving her a ride to the faculty restaurant recently. Despite being the most popular in the class, he talked to her and invited her to study groups. I listened carefully, feeling a slight frown form on my face. Be careful, Jessica, I said, my voice tinged with concern. Sometimes young men from wealthy families have impure intentions towards new female students, especially ones as pretty and smart as you. I could see a mix of irritation and surprise cross Jessica's face at my comment. Her voice was stronger than usual as she responded. She told me I was being prejudiced, that Andrew was her friend and cared about her. She insisted she could take care of herself and that being rich didn't automatically make someone a bad person. She reminded me that she was a college student now, not a child anymore. She needed to make her own friends and have her own experiences, she said. I could feel the irritation in Jessica's voice, and I sighed, carefully choosing my words. I understand, Jessica, I said, stirring the sauce on the stove. I don't mean to underestimate you. I'm just worried, that's all. My voice was a mixture of concern and affection as I continued. It's my duty as your grandmother. There are so many pitfalls in life, and I just want you to be prepared and not get hurt. I watched as Jessica took a deep breath, trying to control her irritation. She told me she understood that I was worried about her. But she needed to learn to live on her own and make her own decisions, she insisted. She wanted to take advantage of the opportunities college was giving her to get to know this new world. That quiet evening, Jessica and I were absorbed in our own activities in the living room when I decided to broach an important subject. I cleared my throat, feeling a mix of hesitation and determination. Jessica, I said, my voice soft but firm, I need you to mind the store next Saturday. I'll be at church all day. It's a special day for me and our church community. I watched as Jessica paused her work on her university assignment, a clear look of irritation flashing across her face. Her voice sounded tired as she responded, reminding me that she had plans for Saturday. She wanted to go out with her university friends, she said. She reminded me that she'd been looking forward to enjoying a bit of free time. I felt a pang of worry in my chest, but I answered in a gentle yet resolute voice. I told her I understood she was busy and that I could appreciate her desire to enjoy her youth. But I reminded her that this was one of the few days I asked her to mind the store. I emphasized how important it was for us, explaining that the store supported our home and that my role at the church was sacred. I appealed to her understanding, saying she knew this. Jessica sighed, and I could see the inner conflict in her eyes. She acknowledged that she understood, that she knew the importance of the store. But she insisted that she needed time too, time to live her life as a university student. She told me she was starting to enjoy other parts of life. I looked at my granddaughter with a mixture of sadness and understanding. Jessica, I said, my voice thick with emotion, I feel things have been changing since you started university. I reminded her that she had always been a caring, good companion. I acknowledged that I knew university was bringing new experiences, but I confessed that I felt like I was losing my sweet girl. My voice caught as I admitted, I feel like I'm being left behind. The pain of watching my granddaughter drift away was evident in my eyes. Jessica was now visibly irritated by this conversation. She answered in a tone stronger than she probably intended. She insisted that she was growing, changing, and that it was natural. She declared that she couldn't stay trapped in poverty forever. Then she dropped a bombshell: she had plans with Andrew on Saturday. But she said if I insisted so much, she'd cancel them. She said she'd mind the store. Her expression was a mix of dissatisfaction and frustration, an attitude I'd never seen in her before. To ease the tension, I tried to change the subject. That Andrew kid seems to be showing up in your life a lot lately, I said, my concern barely hidden. Is there something special about this friendship? Jessica responded quickly, her tone defensive. No, Grandma. It's not like that. Andrew is just a friend. You're being narrow-minded. You're trying to see something that's not there. I just want to live my life beyond this small town. Why can't you understand that? I was shocked by Jessica's response. I'm just worried about you, Jessica. I've always been. From the time you were little, I've been there by your side, supporting and caring for you. I don't want to restrict you. I just want you to be happy and safe. My voice trembled as sadness and surprise mixed together. The tension between us was clear, showing that times were changing, and our relationship faced new challenges. That Saturday, I found myself in the church kitchen, surrounded by dedicated friends, preparing meals with love for those in need in our community. The aroma of spices mingled with the sounds of laughter and conversation about our charity project. I'm so pleased that our small project is making a big difference for so many people, I said, expertly chopping vegetables. Yes, one of my friends replied. Every Saturday, we see more and more faces. Each one has a different story to tell. It's gratifying to be able to help lighten their burdens, even just a little. As we spoke, Louise, a neighbor and friend, burst into the kitchen, clearly distressed, interrupting the warm atmosphere. Shirley, you need to come right away. Something has happened at your store. She spoke breathlessly, her panic evident. The look on her face sent a chill down my spine, and I felt my heart skip a beat. I stopped what I was doing immediately, surprise and distress washing over me. What happened? I asked, my voice trembling. What's going on at the store? I could feel my heart starting to race, anxiety swelling inside me like a balloon ready to burst. The neighbor, still catching her breath, managed to tell me that 2 men in helmets had raided the vegetable section. In that moment, I felt as if the ground had disappeared from under my feet. Jessica. I whispered, my voice thick with worry. She's minding the store today. Is she all right? The thought that something might have happened to my granddaughter filled my heart with terror. It was as if ice water had been poured down my back. The neighbor shook her head, indicating uncertainty. She didn't know, she said. She just heard about the robbery and ran to tell me. We needed to go there right away, she insisted. We had to call the police. Without hesitation, I grabbed my purse and rushed out of the church, my neighbor close behind. My only thought was to find Jessica, to make sure she was safe. As the streets rapidly passed by, I kept running. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I was barely aware of people moving out of my way, my mind focused solely on my granddaughter. Please, please be safe, I prayed silently, tears beginning to well up in my eyes. My neighbor tried to keep up, attempting to offer words of comfort. She told me we'd find her, that Jessica was smart and must have hidden. As we approached the market, I saw a crowd of neighboring shopkeepers gathered near my store. My heart constricted even further, fear growing with each step. Jessica. Jessica. I called out, trying to push through the crowd. The faces around me were a mix of concern and curiosity. I desperately pushed my way through the people, trying to reach the store, my breath coming in gasps. When I finally entered the vegetable section, it was a scene of devastation. I couldn't believe my eyes. The vegetables I had carefully selected and displayed every morning were now scattered on the floor, trampled and abandoned. It was like looking at a battlefield where my daily labor had been the casualty. The cash box, where we kept the fruits of our hard day's work, lay open and empty. I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of our little store, feeling a cruel reminder of all we had lost. A mix of panic and disbelief washed over me as my eyes desperately scanned the area for Jessica. I kept expecting her to appear, safe and sound, but she was nowhere to be seen. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. Louise, standing next to me and trying to calm me down, suggested that Jessica might have stepped out for a reason. She said Jessica might have gone to fetch something, or she could be nearby. Louise reminded me that Jessica had always been responsible, that she wouldn't just leave me like this. But I was too distraught and confused to accept that. I shook my head, feeling like the world was spinning around me. No, Louise, I said, my voice trembling. This isn't like Jessica. She knows how important this store is to us, especially since our situation changed. She wouldn't leave me without a word. With shaking hands, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed Jessica's number. Each ring felt like an eternity to my anxious heart, like waiting for a doctor's verdict. When Jessica finally answered, I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by confusion and fear. Jessica, oh God. Where are you? I asked, my voice quivering with emotion and worry. Jessica's response from the other end of the line was cold and distant, so unlike her usual warm self. She said she was at the store and asked if I wanted something, if something had happened at the church. Her words seemed so disconnected from the reality I was experiencing. It was like we were in two different worlds. No, you're not here, I said, my voice rising with frustration and fear. I'm at the store right now, and it's a mess. The store's been robbed, Jessica. Even the TV we kept here to pass the time. You've always been so responsible and dependable. What's going on, Jessica? Why did you leave everything like this? There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and then Jessica responded. As I stood there, clutching the phone, Jessica's words pierced through me like icy daggers. Her voice was laced with a coldness I had never heard before, chilling me to the bone. She repeated what she had said earlier, that she hadn't wanted to mind the store today. She told me she had just wanted to have some fun, that she had said she was going out with Andrew. My mind reeled as she casually informed me that she was with him now, that he had picked her up and would drop her off before I returned. She claimed there shouldn't have been any problem. Jessica's words sounded surreal to me as I struggled to make sense of the situation. I felt my heart shattering into a million pieces, each shard a memory of the loving granddaughter I thought I knew. But Jessica, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, you left the store open and unprotected. We've been robbed. How could you do this? You've always been my partner, my faithful helper. How could you abandon me like this? My voice was thick with pain and disbelief, each word a struggle to get out. Jessica's response from the other end of the line was sharp and cold, cutting through me like a knife. She said she had already told me that she didn't want to deal with this right now. Then came the words that felt like a physical blow. She said my drama was really for poor people, and that Andrew was right. Before I could respond, before I could even process what she had said, Jessica hung up. I stood there, frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear as tears streamed down my face. A mixture of shock, sorrow, and a deep sense of betrayal washed over me like a tidal wave. I struggled to understand Jessica's actions and words, and the influence this Andrew seemed to have over her. In that crucial moment, standing in the vegetable section with the chaos of the robbery still evident around me, I felt an overwhelming pressure in my chest. Breathing became increasingly difficult, as if the weight of this betrayal was physically crushing me. I leaned against the messy counter, trying to keep my balance as the world seemed to spin around me. "Louise," I managed to say, my voice trembling with fear and anguish, "I don't feel well." The words came out in short, gasping breaths. My high blood pressure. I've always had to be so careful, with all this happening now. I don't know if I can take it. Louise's face creased with worry as she grabbed my arm, trying to offer some support. I felt the weight of the situation crushing down on me as I looked around at the chaos with tear-filled eyes. "I dedicated my life to this store and to Jessica," I said, my voice thick with pain and despair. "And now, look what's happened. The granddaughter I raised with love and kindness, treating me like this. Even in my worst nightmares, I never imagined Jessica would treat me this way." Louise tried to support me, her voice firm as she reminded me of my strength. She said I'd overcome so much already, working barefoot under the sun in the fields. She insisted I couldn't let Jessica's current attitude destroy everything I built. Louise suggested that Jessica was confused, probably influenced by her new boyfriend, but that she'd realize the mistake she was making. But Louise's comforting words weren't enough to calm me down. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my chest, so intense that I doubled over in agony. "Louise, something's wrong," I gasped, clutching my chest. "I think it's my heart." Louise was now in a panic, crying out for help. Her voice echoed through the market. "Someone help! We need a doctor here." People started to gather around, trying to understand what was happening. Louise pulled out her phone and called emergency services. I could hear her pleading for them to hurry, telling them a woman was having a heart attack and giving them our address. As I lay there in the hospital bed, surrounded by tubes and monitors that visually displayed my precarious condition, I felt utterly drained. My faithful friend and longtime companion, Louise, stood by my side, holding my hand tightly. Her presence was a small comfort in the sterile, unfamiliar environment of the hospital room. The doctor, a middle-aged man with a serious expression, explained my situation. He told me I had experienced the early stages of a heart attack. My blood pressure was dangerously high, he said, and I needed to avoid any stressful situations. He informed me that they were starting me on some medications that I would need to take daily. The doctor's words hung in the air, heavy with implications. I listened intently, my eyes reflecting the worry and fear I felt deep in my bones. He said it was fortunate the ambulance had arrived quickly, otherwise, the situation could have been much more serious. As the doctor left the room, I turned to Louise, my face etched with exhaustion and disappointment. As I lay there, feeling the weight of my years more than ever before, I turned to Louise. "Louise," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "this is the first time I've truly felt my age." I paused, gathering my thoughts, feeling a vulnerability I rarely showed to others. I always thought I was strong, that I could handle anything. But now, it feels like everything is crumbling around me. Louise squeezed my hand affectionately, her touch a comforting anchor in this sea of uncertainty. She told me I was a warrior, that I always had been. But even warriors need rest, she reminded me gently. I didn't always have to be a superhero, she said. She paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully before continuing. Louise suggested, with all due respect, that we should let Jessica know about what had happened. She reminded me of all I had done for Jessica, giving her opportunities many young people don't have. Thanks to me, Jessica could study without worrying about work, and yet, despite getting into college, she was behaving this way. Louise didn't mince words, she thought Jessica was being incredibly ungrateful. She believed Jessica needed to know what she had caused. I sighed, a wave of sadness washing over me. I know, Louise, I said, my voice heavy with emotion. I know. But that's how young people are sometimes. They lose their way, get swept up in new experiences and people. I looked out the window, observing the gray sky, feeling it mirrored my mood. I don't want to scare Jessica. I don't want her to feel responsible for this. My voice was soft, filled with love and concern for my granddaughter, despite everything. Louise insisted that Jessica needed to understand the consequences of her actions. She needed to realize that what she does affects others, especially me, who had always been there for her. Louise's voice was firm as she argued that I couldn't protect Jessica from everything. Sometimes, she said, the truth was necessary for growth. I continued to gaze out the window, my thoughts as cloudy as the sky outside. Maybe you're right, Louise, I finally said, turning back to her. But I need time to think. I don't want to create even more distance between us. I took a deep breath, wincing slightly at the pain in my chest. When I get home, when I'm feeling a bit stronger, I'll try to understand what happened. As I stood in Jessica's doorway, I felt my heart racing, a mix of anxiety and determination coursing through my veins. I knew this conversation was necessary, but that didn't make it any easier. Jessica, my dear, I began, my voice trembling slightly as I tried to maintain my emotional balance. We need to talk about what happened on Saturday. I need to understand what's going on with you. You've never acted like this before. We've always been a team. I thought I could always count on you. I felt tears welling up in my eyes as I spoke. The memory of finding the store in such a state, the fear that had gripped me, it all came rushing back. Leaving the store in that condition, it's not just about the money, I was so worried about you. I thought something terrible had happened. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. Your grandmother's getting old, Jessica. I have to take care of my health too. What happened on Saturday, it affected me deeply. By now, tears were freely flowing down my face. I watched as Jessica finished getting ready, her response coming in an irritated tone that cut through me like a knife. She said she was already running late for college and didn't have time for this drama right now. She turned to face me, her face clearly showing signs of annoyance. What she said next hit me like a physical blow. She told me she was dating Andrew now, and that he was showing her a new world. A world where not everything was about struggle like our life, but where there was room for enjoyment. Eating at restaurants, enjoying life. She said she didn't want to be embarrassed working in the vegetable stand anymore. She was associating with high-level people now and needed to adapt to that world. Her tone was unlike anything I'd ever heard from her before. As Jessica spoke, I felt my heart constrict, a physical pain that mirrored the emotional turmoil inside me. I realized that the granddaughter I knew and loved was transforming into someone I barely recognized. It was like watching a butterfly emerge from its chrysalis, but instead of beauty, I saw only coldness and disdain. Jessica, I said, my voice thick with emotion, no matter what job we do to make a living, you've always been more than enough. I paused, trying to find the right words to bridge the growing chasm between us. It's not the work that determines our worth, but the love, respect, and care we have for each other. Working in the store was never something to be ashamed of. It was our livelihood, our way of securing your future and providing for your education. I watched Jessica's face, searching for any sign that my words were getting through. Carefully, still trying to reach some understanding with her, I asked about Andrew. I wanted to know if he was a good boy, if he was serious about her. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was being manipulated, like a puppet on strings she couldn't see. I hoped for some reassuring answer about this new boyfriend of hers. But Jessica's response was clearly irritated, each word a little dagger to my heart. She insisted that of course he was a good person. She said he was from a different world than ours, educated, multilingual, well-traveled. She told me he cared for her and just wanted her to have a good life like his. As I listened to Jessica's words, I felt my heart breaking all over again. I tried to maintain my composure, even as sadness washed over me like a tide. Drawing on the wisdom born from years of experience, I responded gently. Jessica, there's still so much to learn about life. All that glitters is not gold, my child. I paused, my eyes searching hers. Remember, I only want your happiness. But don't forget where we came from. In times of real trouble, only family and God will stand by you. Tears welled up in my eyes as I continued. You're young and beautiful now. But remember what your grandfather did to me. The memory of that betrayal still stung, even after all these years. I worked hard under the sun. Your grandfather abandoned me for a younger, more attractive woman, but I still opened this store, paid for your schooling, and now you can become a doctor. There's nothing to be ashamed of in that. My words were an emotional appeal, trying to remind Jessica of her roots and values. As I spoke, I reached out to lovingly fold Jessica's white coat that lay on the bed. But in a swift, rough movement, Jessica snatched it from my hands. Let go, Grandma. You'll get it dirty, she said, her face twisted with disdain. Shocked and hurt by Jessica's gesture, I stepped back, feeling as if I'd been slapped. Now visibly irritated, Jessica began speaking louder, her words cutting through the air like shards of glass. She told me she was sick of these lectures, that she was old enough to manage her own life. She wanted me to leave her alone. She said Andrew always told her she wasn't born for this kind of life, that she was meant for greater things. Apparently, he'd been saying this for a while, but now it was clear to her. She declared her intention to live with Andrew until she finished college, insisting she needed to prioritize her own comfort. That way, she said, I wouldn't have to spend money on her or give her these lectures. Jessica's words were sharp, slicing through the air between us. I looked at her with a mixture of sadness and resignation, feeling the distance between us growing wider with each passing moment. I only want your happiness, Jessica, I said softly. But if this is what you want, I'll respect your decision. I slowly stood up, my exhausted and disappointed figure a stark contrast to Jessica's determined energy. I'll always be here, my child. Always. Just call sometimes, let me know you're okay. With those words, I left the room, leaving Jessica alone to start packing. The next few years felt like navigating a sea of loneliness and sorrow. I turned my nights into times of introspection and intimate conversations with God, seeking solace and understanding in the void left by Jessica's absence. My days were filled with activity at the store and warm interactions with community friends who became my support network. On a particularly melancholy afternoon, while having coffee at Louise's house, the conversation inevitably turned to Jessica. I sat across from Louise, my dear friend who always worried about me. She asked how Jessica was doing, her eyes full of concern. I sighed, staring into the coffee cup I held in my hands. Jessica, I began, feeling the weight of each word, it's like her relationship with Andrew has brainwashed her. I could hear the pain and frustration in my own voice, reflecting how difficult it was to accept the changes in my granddaughter. We talk on the phone sometimes, but she rarely visits. I feel like my Jessica is still in there somewhere, but she's being suppressed by this monster of a puppet master. My hands trembled slightly as I continued, my voice barely above a whisper. He's convinced her that our past, our life, is something to be ashamed of. She's so desperate to belong to this new world he's shown her that she's exposing herself to these harmful influences. I shook my head slowly, feeling a deep sadness wash over me. Louise placed her hand over mine, trying to offer some comfort. She reminded me that I had done everything I could for Jessica, given her love, education, a home. She told me, with a gentleness that only a true friend can possess, that I couldn't blame myself for the choices Jessica was making now. I looked at Louise, my eyes reflecting the anguish of a mother feeling helpless. I'll always love and support Jessica, no matter what, I said. But I can't deny that all of this has been a huge disappointment for me. I never imagined our relationship would end up like this. Louise spoke thoughtfully, reminding me that life sometimes leads us down unexpected paths. She suggested that with time, Jessica might realize what truly matters: family love, real values. She urged me not to lose hope, reminding me that people can change, and that Jessica might find her way back to me. I nodded, recognizing the truth in Louise's words. I talk to God about this every day, Louise, I confessed. I pray that Jessica will find the light again, that she'll be able to see beyond the illusions that young man has planted in her mind. And so, with God and my friends by my side, I continued to stand strong. As I answered the phone that quiet afternoon, I heard a familiar voice on the other end, but it was trembling and distressed. The sudden sound startled me, breaking the silence that had become my constant companion. It was Jessica, sobbing, her voice choked with tears. She asked if she could come home, her voice filled with desperation and regret. Without hesitation, my heart swelling with maternal love, I told her of course she could come home, that she was always welcome here. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety as I answered. When Jessica arrived, dragging her suitcase behind her, I was there to greet her, ready to help. I saw deep sorrow in my granddaughter's eyes, the look of someone deeply wounded. I asked her what had happened, why she was crying so much, my voice filled with worry and love. Jessica didn't answer. Instead, she collapsed at my feet, clinging to my ankles, the place she'd always felt most comfortable, and continued to cry uncontrollably. She begged me to forgive her, to forgive everything. All the bad things she'd done, all the pain she'd caused me. She said she regretted it all, that she'd felt that way for a long time but couldn't escape the situation. She told me she'd been trapped in a world that wasn't hers. Jessica kept crying, her words coming out between sobs. I felt tears welling up in my own eyes as I bent down and lifted Jessica up. Holding her tightly, I told her I understood, that of course I forgave her. But I also told her she needed to understand how much she'd hurt me, how much I'd suffered. My voice was shaking, but full of love. I told her I'd already lost her mother, that what she'd done was terrible, something you wouldn't even do to a dog. I held Jessica close as she continued to cry, her tears soaking my blouse. She told me she understood, that she had been blind. She said she'd been dazzled by the world she thought she wanted, but it was all an illusion. She missed me terribly, she said, and the life we had together. Her words were an ocean of regret and pain. Jessica looked into my eyes, seeking some assurance of salvation, and asked if I could really find a place in my heart to forgive her. I answered with an expression full of compassion and wisdom. I told her I would accept her, and that I would find a place in my heart to forgive her because that's what God had taught me. but I also wanted her to know and never forget how much suffering she had caused me. We held each other for a long time, the silence around us broken only by Jessica's sobs. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, that there were scars to heal and trust to rebuild. When we finally sat down in the living room, Jessica and I found the space for a calmer, deeper conversation. Jessica, her eyes still red from crying, hesitated for a moment before sharing another piece of news with me. In a small voice, almost a whisper, she revealed that she was pregnant. Surprised by this confession, I quietly waited for her to continue. She told me that when she told Andrew and his family, they had wanted her to abort the baby. They said a child would be an obstacle to his future. Her words were filled with pain and disappointment, difficult to get out. I moved closer to Jessica and held her tightly. I assured her that we would cherish the life growing inside her, my child. I reminded her that she was about to graduate from college, and that we didn't need those soulless vampires. I told her they would each get their comeuppance eventually. Jessica cried again, sobbing in my arms. I held Jessica's face in my hands, looking into her eyes with a mixture of love and firmness. I told her that I wasn't just showing understanding to her, but also to my great-grandchild, the grandchild of my beloved daughter growing inside her. My words seemed to give Jessica a new perspective, and she began to understand the depth and complexity of my love. In a trembling voice, Jessica confessed that she was going to be a mother and that she was terrified. I hugged her again, offering the comfort that only a mother can give. I assured her that she wouldn't walk this journey alone, that I would be by her side every step of the way. We talked for hours, with me sharing my wisdom and experience, and Jessica listening carefully, absorbing every word. It was a time of learning, healing, and strengthening our bond. Through tears and smiles, I told Jessica that she would be a wonderful mother, and that this baby would receive love from both of us. I could see a thread of hope weaving its way into Jessica's demeanor as she looked at me with newfound respect and admiration. She expressed her desire to be a good mother, strong, loving, and decisive, just as I had been for her. She promised to forever honor me as the remarkable woman I am. I nodded, feeling a glimmer of pride in my eyes. On the day of Jessica's graduation, my house was a whirlwind of emotions as we prepared for the big event. As I watched Jessica glowing in her graduation outfit, I felt a growing hesitation. With a trembling voice, I confessed to Jessica that I was afraid to go to her graduation. I didn't want her to feel embarrassed because of me. Jessica stopped what she was doing when she heard my words, approaching me with a look of surprise and love on her face. She assured me that feeling embarrassed was impossible. After everything she had been through, she said she had learned that there was nothing greater than the pride she felt for me. She told me that she was able to graduate today because of me. As we entered the graduation party, Jessica and I walked hand in hand, drawing the attention of the other attendees. I could feel critical eyes on us, especially on my bare feet, a symbol of my humble origins and simple life. Jessica noticed the stares and whispers around us and paused for a moment. Then, in a beautiful gesture of solidarity and love, she took off her own shoes, matching my stance and challenging society's norms and expectations. I felt a surge of pride and love for my granddaughter, mixed with a touch of embarrassment. "Jessica," I whispered, "you don't have to do this." But she just squeezed my hand and smiled at me, her eyes shining with determination. During the ceremony, Jessica was invited to give a speech. As she began to speak, her eyes locked on mine, and I felt my heart swell with emotion. She dedicated her speech to me, calling me the true warrior of our story, the woman who raised her. Her voice was filled with emotion as she shared my journey, from raising her mother alone to giving her a better future. I felt tears welling up in my eyes as she spoke, her words painting a picture of our life together that I hadn't fully appreciated until that moment. I say with great pride, Jessica continued, her voice strong despite the tears in her eyes, that I was able to graduate from medical school today because of my grandmother's vegetable stand. I felt a lump in my throat, remembering all those long days at the stand, the ache in my back, the worry about making ends meet. But hearing Jessica acknowledge it all made every struggle worth it. Then Jessica turned to face the dean of the university, her posture straightening as she spoke. "Some people here don't deserve this diploma," she said, pausing for a moment to look directly at Andrew. As Jessica confronted Andrew, the room fell silent, all eyes turning towards him. Several students stood up, confirming Jessica's accusations. The stunned dean requested Andrew be escorted from the premises. As he was being led out, Andrew began shouting insults, mainly directed at me. I had been watching the scene with a mixture of surprise and pride at my granddaughter's courage, but I maintained my composure and dignity. With a strength and dignity born from a life of struggle and triumph, I approached him barefoot, took a glass of drink from a table, and threw it in his face. "You will never be the father of my great-grandchild," I said firmly. "And may God return all the suffering you've caused others." Jessica rushed to my side, defending me fiercely. She told Andrew that all the money in the world couldn't buy the dignity I possessed, something his family would never have. She also revealed that she knew where his family's money came from, corruption schemes and illegal sales, and that the police would soon know everything she had seen. As security guards led Andrew away, he was silenced by the power of Jessica's words and my unwavering stance. The hall erupted in applause, not just for the act of justice, but in recognition of my strength and character. The rest of the evening turned into a celebration, not just of Jessica's graduation, but of the triumph of truth, honesty, and unconditional love. I found myself surrounded by people who admired my strength, feeling an immense pride in Jessica. And Jessica, finally free from the shadows of her past, embraced me, knowing that together we were invincible. In the years that followed, Jessica's and my life transformed into a journey of joy and success. As I sat quietly at the party, watching my family and friends celebrate together, I felt a deep sense of peace, accomplishment, and gratitude. My life, once filled with challenges and struggles, had become a testament to the power of resilience, love, and faith. Jessica, now a dedicated mother and respected cardiac surgeon, had chosen her specialty inspired by me. Her son, a cheerful and loving child, had built a special bond with me, bringing laughter and happiness into our home. I was enjoying every moment of this new chapter in my life, where peace and contentment reigned. At the housewarming party for the new home Jessica had bought for me, there was an atmosphere of blessing and thankfulness. Jessica and I met with Louise, my longtime friend. Jessica thanked Louise with an emotional smile for everything she had done for me, for being there when Jessica couldn't be. Then Jessica revealed a surprise she had prepared for Louise. She wanted Louise and her family to take over the vegetable stand. It hadn't been functioning since I retired, but Jessica believed no one was better suited to continue this legacy. She offered to cover the renovation costs. Visibly moved, Louise embraced Jessica and me. She said she didn't know what to say, that it was a wonderful gift. She promised to take care of the store with love and dedication. The conversation turned to the past, and Louise mentioned something she had heard recently. She said she'd heard that thanks to Jessica's accusations, Andrew's entire family had been arrested. She always knew Jessica was a good person with a pure heart. I nodded, my eyes shining with pride. I told them I always knew Jessica would find her way back. She was strong, brave, and above all, honest. I looked at Jessica and told her that her mother must be watching us from heaven, proud of the woman she had become and how she was raising her son with respect and humility. As the party continued, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. I remembered the long nights at the vegetable stand, the worry and heartache when Jessica left with Andrew, and the joy of her return. Each challenge, each tear shed, had led to this moment of triumph and peace. I looked at Jessica, now laughing with her son, and felt a swell of pride so intense it almost took my breath away. She had overcome so much, grown so much, and here she was, a successful doctor and loving mother. And her son, my great-grandson, was growing up in a home filled with love and values, the very things I had always strived to provide. As I sat there, surrounded by the warmth of family and friends, I realized that my life had come full circle. From the humble beginnings at the vegetable stand to this moment of joy and prosperity, every step had been worth it. Every struggle had led to this beautiful outcome. And as I watched Jessica with her son, I knew that our legacy of love, resilience, and integrity would continue for generations to come. In that moment, I felt truly blessed. Not just for the material comforts or the success, but for the love that surrounded me, the family that had weathered storms together, and the knowledge that our story, my story, would live on. It was a reminder that no matter how dark things may seem, with love, faith, and perseverance, there's always hope for a brighter tomorrow. And that, I realized, was the greatest lesson of all. If my story touched you in any way, I'd be grateful if you could show your support. It's as simple as clicking that like button or subscribing to the channel. The next amazing story might be just around the corner, waiting to appear on your screen. Your support is truly appreciated, more than words can express. It's what keeps these stories flowing, like a river of hope and inspiration. Until we meet again, remember to hold your loved ones close, to face each day with courage, and to never, ever give up on love. Because in the end, that's what life is all about. Thank you for watching, and take care.